Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport, and today I watched the Singapore Grand Prix, as I'm sure you did as well. And before we get into that, I would just like to say that this week has been a bit of a disappointment for me. It's been a very busy week and I haven't really been able to devote any time to making videos, but next week should be back to normal. And so with that, we'll talk about the Singapore Grand Prix. It was a strange one. I'm not saying it was terrible, but it was just a bit odd. The fact that the field was very, very close together. Or at least there wasn't the field spread you normally get in a Formula 1 race. But still, it was strange seeing cars get within a second of each other and then backing off because we didn't want to overheat their tyres and brakes and engines and whatnot. That's not really a good thing for motor racing. Preserving the tyres and engine, it's obviously necessary in the heat or whatever, but it's the sort of thing you don't mind seeing in like a 8-hour endurance race. But in a Formula 1 race, there shouldn't really be time for that. And if there were options open to the teams and drivers, such as refueling, say they had different fuel loads, if you're stuck in this train where you can't get close because you don't want to overheat your tyres, you could go into the pits and do something with your fuel load. But Formula 1 doesn't have that, and so we just had this long period of cars following each other until we got a safety car. And I don't think that's great racing, but there were moments in this Grand Prix where we did see some interesting stuff and some good on-track battling. The most shocking thing, of course, is that Red Bull's winning streak has come to an end, and Max Verstappen's as well. He still managed to get into the points, but it was a very poor weekend. It just looked like the Red Bulls did not work at this circuit. Max Verstappen was sliding all over the place. Perez had a little spin. It was, on paper, a decent result for them to get in the points. But obviously, given how dominant they've been this season, this was a kind of a sad way to end that. But to be fair to Ferrari, they did a fantastic job. Not just on having the quickest car in Singapore to take advantage of Red Bull's issues, they did a blinding job with the strategy as well. At least in keeping Carlos Sainz safe. Didn't really help Charles Leclerc, but I'm sure Ferrari will look at it as we'll just take what we can get. This is only the second win of Carlos Sainz's Formula 1 career, but I think he's a genuine challenger to... You can't really call Charles Leclerc the number one driver at Ferrari, because Carlos Sainz is doing a fantastic job in that second car. I just think in outright pace, Carlos Sainz is sometimes lacking behind his Monegasque teammates, but other times, and especially during races, I think he is a lot more consistent, a lot less error prone, and all round a very decent driver. And for the championship, there's nothing going to change this year. Max Verstappen is going to win it. I imagine Sergio Perez will be second and Red Bull easily winning the Constructors. It comes down to, can Ferrari challenge Mercedes for second over the course of this season? I think Aston Martin have fallen out of that fight now, and I think you're going to see Alonso slip out of the top 5, which is disappointing given their early season form, but the Aston Martin has not maintained it, and I hope that means they're concentrating on their 2024 car for a real challenge at the front of the field, and they're going to be one of the teams to beat next year. That's a possibility, given the experienced staff they've brought in, the massive upgrades they've made to their factory. There's a good chance Aston Martin are going to be a tough team to beat in 2024. It's just strange that they haven't really brought any upgrades this year, and they have started to fall back a bit, and maybe that's the plan. But we'll have to wait and see in that one. I think they can't get anywhere with Lance Stroll in their second car. He again had a disastrous weekend, crashed in qualifying, couldn't get out for the race. If he can't race at Suzuka and they have to put Felipe Drugovich in that car, better for Formula 1, better for Aston Martin. Lawrence Stroll might feel sad that he can't have his son race in Formula 1, but I'm sure he can find a space for him somewhere. Aston Martin have GT cars in every series, or I'm sure he can pay for a Formula E seat or maybe IndyCar or something, but he should not be in Formula 1. That time has passed. He's had, 6 or 7 seasons? He's not that impressive. And if Aston Martin want to challenge at the front with the best teams, they need 2 decent drivers. Fernando Alonso, the most experienced driver in Formula 1 ever, 2-time world champion. He's a great driver, he's a great team leader, and he'd be a great mentor for a young driver coming in, such as Felipe Drugovich. So, for me, that would be the perfect balance. I think Drugovich is a really good driver, and he could scoop up more points than Lance Stroll has managed, and that could turn Aston Martin into real contenders. And this race was very disappointing for him because obviously Fernando Alonso did not finish the race either, or he did finish, but he went off at... Well, he had issues in his pit stop, he had a penalty, and then he went off as well. So it was a bad race for Aston Martin, they scored no points. I'm pretty sure Alonso will have dropped behind Hamilton for 3rd in the championship, 4th in the championship. Can't remember. But it's a massively disappointing weekend for them. Behind the Ferraris as well. At one point this year, Aston Martin were pretty much clear of them. So it's been a massive swing in favour of Ferrari. And it's not just strange that Ferrari won this race, not just on race pace, but on strategy as well. You don't really expect it to happen. In fact, I'm pretty sure that's a sign of the apocalypse. Mercedes did a fantastic job keeping their cars up there as well. But George Russell crashing towards the end of the race is really disappointing. I think he should be a lot better than that. This season has not panned out for George Russell for whatever reason, but he was doing a good job in 3rd place. He should have been on that podium. It was a silly mistake that has cost him that. But that did mean Lando Norris got 2nd in the race, another fantastic result for the McLaren driver. Lewis Hamilton behind him, and Sainz, Norris, Hamilton on the podium. It could have been an all-British podium. It looked like that could be a real possibility at one point. But I think Sainz was always going to get clear. And beyond that, there was not too many surprises in the top 10. Haas did a fantastic job this weekend, but missed out. But there were points for Liam Lawson, which is incredible. What an incredible job he has done. And he goes to Suzuka next weekend to race in Formula 1. What I am worried about is that he's not going to be at the Super Formula finale, because he still has a chance to win that championship, and the final 2 races are at Suzuka as well. I don't know if he'll be... I think when Pierre Gasly was going for that championship, and he was brought in to replace Brendan Hartley and Daniel Kvyat at was Toro Rosso or AlphaTauri, whichever one it was. I think they were still Toro Rosso, weren't they? I can't actually remember when it was, but Pierre Gasly was going for the Super Formula Championship as well. And I think the weekend of the final Super Formula round, Pierre Gasly did compete in that, and they brought back Daniel Kvyat to race in Formula 1. So maybe they'll give Liam Lawson the chance to win the Super Formula Championship. And maybe, they could just bring Daniel Ricciardo back. It was not a huge loss to them. But Liam Lawson almost has as many points as Yuki Tsunoda, and he's done better than Ricciardo and Nick De Vries already. So that's an incredible job. Who else scored points? Gasly, I think, scored points, which was decent, but Ocon broke down again. It's not been a great year for Alpine, especially on the reliability front. Yes, points for Liam Lawson, fantastic job for him. Kevin Magnussen got one for Haas as well in 10th. I'm not even sure when Haas last scored points, so it's a great job for them. They were both in the points at one point, but I think they both individually had issues. Williams, Sargent had a little crash, but he did continue, but he was nowhere anyway. And Albon, I think he was just outside the points. So, yeah, as I said, this was not a bad race. It's just kind of disappointing that for strategy reasons they can't really try and overtake each other. But it did have its moments, this one. And I do like the Singapore track. I'm not sure about the changes they've made. and I suppose they've made it faster. But I mean, apparently it makes overtaking easier, and I'm not sure we saw that at this race. But I do like the general atmosphere of the Singapore Grand Prix. I think the fact that it's a street circuit, a night race. I think the original Singapore circuit was the best with the massive sausage curbs, because I know people complain about them, and I don't think sausage curbs are the correct solution. But having a penalty for running wide, it doesn't have to be a wall, just something that, you know, makes drivers think twice about doing it. Because as we saw at the start of this race, Lewis Hamilton, I mean, but he was braver on the brakes, they said in the commentary. I mean, he braked later than everyone else and was trying to get into second. Ran out of space and had to go around the first corner. It was too easy. And he obviously came out ahead of Russell and had to drop spaces to Russell and Norris. But there should have been a penalty for doing that beyond just, if you don't do as you're told, you get a time penalty. If that was a gravel trap, it would be a different result, and it might make drivers think twice about pulling these moves. So maybe it would be a negative on Formula 1, but I just think visually it's better to see the penalty happen rather than it just be an abstract concept such as time. I don't know, it's just a thought. Anyway, let me know what you think about the Singapore Grand Prix of 2023. What do you think about Red Bull losing their streak? What do you think about Ferrari finally winning a race this year? Anything else in your mind, just let me know in the comments. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. We are nearly at 1,000 now, and it has come up very, very quickly. And I'm going to have to think of something to do to celebrate 1,000 subscribers. But I will think of something. So, with that, have a good one.